This is Corkscrew Convos, another theme park podcast. My name is Chris.
And my name is DJ.
And we're here today to talk about theme parks, roller coasters, barbecue, the theater, the retro squad, and everything else under the sun in its time. But first, let's get this disclaimer out of the way.
The views, opinions, and information expressed during the following presentation are solely those of the individuals involved and do not represent organizations affiliated with those individuals. Hashtag Retro Squad Up.
Oh, slow down there, Speed Racer. We could barely hear you. You were moving so fast.
I'm in my radio commercial cutting days.
Okay, well, you did get the disclaimer out of the way as I requested, so I guess I can't be mad. But DJ, I just got my first sunburn of the year this week.
Now, that's impressive, I think. Were you outside more than you had been in the weeks past, or is the sun just, I guess, brighter than it has been? Tell me the story there.
I think it's a combination of things. I will say that I have previously, in previous years, gotten a sunburn in the wintertime, I'm proud to say, or maybe embarrassed to say, I don't know. But it's I definitely usually have to wear sunscreen starting sometime in spring, and I guess we have reached that point where I gotta wear sunscreen when I'm gonna be in the sun for more than a few minutes. But I guess it's safe to say that things are really heating up.
I guess they are. I don't normally have that problem. I have a darker complexion. I might get sunburn on the shoulders a couple times throughout the year, but even if I use sunscreen, I only have to put like SPF 30 on, it seems like.
Ooh, bring me that SPF 100. That's what I use.
I've heard that I'm pretty sure I've heard dermatologists, they say, if it's under 50, don't go for it. Maybe we need an episode on Corkscrew Convos about the best sunscreen to purchase for your day out in a park.
Oh, I already know that. It's by Neutrogena. It's not super oily. I mean, this isn't a commercial for them, but it's not super oily. It dries pretty light on your skin, and it usually goes up to 100 SPF, so that's really all you need.
See, I would have said Sunbum. Are you familiar with Sunbum?
No, I'm not. What is that?
They've got the monkey mascot. It's like kind of a retro tiki feel on the packaging. It looks kind of cool and modern, I will say. It doesn't look like, I don't know what the Neutrogena bottle looks like, but you see things like CeraVe, like, oh, that's specifically skincare. Like it's got this kind of, something behind its brand. Sunbum just looks like a fun time to be had with sunscreen. You're going to have a great day, whether you're out on the beach, at the water park, in the middle of the Midway. And I think a lot of parks actually sell Sunbum, if I'm not mistaken.
Well, DJ, I feel like I'm being sold to a little bit. I'm already plenty happy with Neutrogena, but I will keep Sunbum in mind. I think we might be onto something when we think about maybe a future episode topic where we talk about what we pack when we go to the parks, because it's not usually something that you can just roll out of bed and then just go to the parks. I mean, sometimes that's the case, but usually not. You really gotta plan for it if you really want to make the most out of your day.
I think, if I remember correctly, Chris, you are an advocate of cargo shorts in a park, if I'm not mistaken. And also, you taught me the pocketed shirt, like the Columbia PFG style shirt. I remember the first time we went to park with you, and I was like, this man's got it figured out.
Yeah, I mean, those are nifty shirts, and usually they're vented in the back, so it really gets some air moving. But with cargo shorts, it's a dicey topic, DJ, because they are apparently not fashionable. At least I have been told that they are not fashionable. So it's a balance between having enough pocket space to be able to stash all of my loose articles like my wallet, my phone, my keys, and all of that, and being fashionable at a theme park, which again is not a primary concern for a lot of us, including me. But I have been told many times, they say, oh, you're wearing cargo shorts? I said, yeah, I'm not going to lose my phone. But DJ, about that, I have recently come into a bit of a middle ground, and it's called a hip pack. Do you know what I mean, DJ?
Tell me about hip pack. Could there be another phrase to describe what a hip pack could be?
Yeah, but
I feel like you're masking this a bit.
I have been told, again, another thing that I have been told, but I've been told that the other, maybe more prominent name for this article is a bad word in the United Kingdom. So I, for the purposes of keeping this podcast clean, have chosen to call it a hip pack or a waist pack. But I think we all know what I am trying to describe.
Now, that was a thing that it seemed like it came back in fashion a bit. I know what you're talking about, but it still is in a gray area. See, this would be a great episode. Chris and DJ versus Wild, some sort of theme park expedition show. We could say about everything we like to take, why we take it, pros and cons to each. I'm actually more of a drawstring backpack person, and I don't go to any park anymore without my Chacos on, if it's reasonably warm outside.
Chacos. Now that's footwear, right?
That's footwear. I'm wearing them right now, actually. I have 2 pair of Chacos, and they're basically a strap type of sandal. They fit really well to your foot, so they're not sliding around all day. I think they were prominent in the early 90s. They kind of went away, and then they came back, and now you can find Chacos in so many different places. But they have tremendous tread on the bottom. You can go on water rides. You can go on any sort of roller coaster or spinning ride or flying ride because they just adhere to your feet so well with 3 or more straps attached to you.
Oh, I actually think I have a pair of Chacos, but I don't usually wear them as an all-day thing because they get a little uncomfortable through all-day wear, at least for me. But definitely
I could see that.
Well, if I'm going to maybe target my local park to ride the water rides on a specific day, and I know I'm not going to be there all day, so I can manage to wear wet, accommodating clothing, like quick-dry stuff, then I would wear my Chacos, because that offers that flexibility where it can be both dry and wet.
There's nothing worse, and maybe we'll wrap this up here, because we really need to do a whole episode on this, I think.
Yeah,
but for
I think
me,
we're almost there.
There's nothing worse than having to carry, you may disagree with me on this, but having to carry another article of something with you all day. Like, it even drives me crazy if I have a coat on and I have to wrap it around my waist or something.
Yeah, that can get old very quickly, especially if you're walking around the whole park the whole day. You want your hands to be free so that you can hold turkey legs and frozen drinks and all the other good stuff.
I dare say I might even be a fashionable swimming trunk kind of person who wears swimming trunks all day.
Yeah, if they're decent enough to wear all day, yeah, that's definitely an option too.
Yep.
But you know, DJ, when we said all the things that we're here to talk about today, we didn't really talk about what to wear to the parks. So, I mean, it is sort of on topic, but let's really get into what we are here to do. And that's here to talk about theme parks and roller coasters and all that good stuff. So, DJ...
into the meat of the episode, one may say.
Well, yeah, the meat of the episode. Speaking of meat, as a bit of a follow-up to last episode, let's go on a brief little tangent as well. The pulled pork that I mentioned that I was smoking on the past episode turned out great. Tomorrow I will be turning the day 3 leftovers into a chili. Oh, it's going to be good. I mean, DJ, last month's chili, I had 5 different kinds of peppers that some of them I diced up, some of them I really carved into fine little pieces, and others I roasted and then chopped. So I didn't use a ton of chili powder for my chili because I was adding chilies themselves. So I was really happy with how it turned out. It had a nice sweet heat to it, but it wasn't too spicy, and I'm really looking forward to making it again, but with pulled pork.
I think peppers are probably one of my favorite things to put in or on everything. I mean, they're so good. I think I've come to realize this past weekend, one of my very favorite, if not my favorite pizza topping, are very thinly sliced jalapenos on top of a pizza baked. Have you ever tried that before?
Not jalapenos, because I usually find them to be the pickled kinds if they're on pizza or a
This is just
sandwich.
straight jalapeno, just cut in slices. Just wash it off and just cut it very small, thin slices on like a cheese and pepperoni pizza. It's incredible.
Okay, I think I'd like that, but I guess usually the pizza places by me and the major chains, they usually serve that pickled jalapeno, and that's a
Yeah.
little much for me.
I wouldn't do the vinegary pickled jalapeno, no, but just a
Okay.
fresh jalapeno slice. Oh my goodness. You could just do a cheese pizza with that on it.
Huh. I'm going to have to try that sometime. Oh, DJ, we just got into another tangent. I mean, it was fun to talk about peppers and pulled pork and chili. We do that a lot, but really, let's get back into the roller coasters of the episode. Let's get back on track there. So, again, we've said in the past few episodes, we've been on a bit of a hot streak of what we've done with Corkscrew Convos, another theme park podcast. We interviewed Chris from the National Roller Coaster Museum and Archives. That was a ton of fun. We learned about things like the gauge that most wooden roller coasters follow. And we talked about Disneyland Forward as well on 2 episodes ago, I think, where we really broke it down into what it meant and maybe what some people think it was and what we know it to be to an extent. But even in our last episode, too, we really had some good discussions going about the opening of Avengers Campus coming in June at the Disneyland Resort. And I think that what became our best month for Corkscrew Convos has continued into what is possibly going to be our best quarter of a year for Corkscrew Convos. I think we're figuring it out, DJ.
And also, I noticed some news. You're talking about the National Roller Coaster Museum. I believe on their Facebook today or yesterday, they posted a floor plan of what the museum could actually look like. That's very interesting. I would encourage anyone listening to check out their Facebook, National Roller Coaster Museum. It's pretty cool. It looks very, very museum-like, which is good. Because right now, from the photos I've seen of the facility, it's not open to the public, and it's literally just stuff stacked neatly in a way. Things on the walls, things over here, over there. They kind of presented a flow in this post. Very interesting. Definitely check it out.
Oh, nice. I'm really going to have to check that out because we have seen those pictures that you mentioned. They're amazingly intricate, well-lit pictures out there that really get our mouths watering, proverbially. So I'm interested to see what the flow of the museum will be because I can't wait to go there. I am so looking forward to it.
And Chris, I don't know if I told you, I've actually got a park planned that I'm going to next month. It's going to be the first park I've been to in almost an entire year.
Oh, do tell.
Well, it's pretty close to me. We talk about this park a lot of the times. I feel like nationally, of course, globally too, it doesn't get a lot of love, except when it was on SNL for some random reason. I will be at Worlds of Fun next month for their opening day. I'm excited to return to that park. I worked there actually in high school, a bit of info about me, and so excited to go there and see what the park looks like. I haven't been there in, I think, 2 or 3 years, so excited to see what it looks like. I've been there with their new beautiful front entrance. I remember that looking great. But excited to go there. It's going to be a day of flats, Chris, because I was looking at the ride list and I realized that there's so many rides I have not been on at that park. And I've had to have been there. Obviously, I worked there, but like over 20 times, I would think, just visiting. And there's still so many rides I haven't been on.
Wow. So it sounds like you have your marching orders when you arrive at Worlds of Fun. It's a park I've been to a few times, some of those with you, and we definitely had a lot of fun there. They have a great haunt event that they usually do. I'm really glad that you're going to be getting back there next month. That's going to be really special.
I've always said this too. I think they're in the at least top 5 of Cedar Fair haunt events. It's very, very, very good haunt events, but event that they do. But, we'll do some roller coasters. We'll try some food. I want to try the new Cotton Blossom barbecue that they have. But definitely want to check out a lot of those flat rides. There's the Troika, the Mustang Runner I've never been on. Cyclone Sam's, like probably one of their most iconic flat rides. It's basically I think it's a chance wipeout, but it's in a building with a bunch of lights. Falcon's Flight, that's a spinning Huss ride, I believe. Hus ride with 3 different spinning gondolas. So a lot of things I want to do. And I think, Chris, I would direct our listeners over to Instagram that day to check out maybe a little live event that I do. I'll at least be taking over the story for the day.
Oh, I like the sound of that. Well, that is something that we all have to look forward to in late May. It's going to be a ton of fun. But DJ, we were talking a little bit about the history of the industry with the National Roller Coaster Museum. It's time that we get into our anniversary coaster of the episode, as this is our 27th episode. This is going to be a roller coaster that opened in 1927. And DJ, it's a big one.
Big as in height? Is it iconic? Speed? I mean, 1927, we're our 27th episode. Last time we had a very, very interesting ride. We had the Crystal Beach Cyclone. We talked about the nurse being on staff at that ride. We read some quotes about the ride. 1927, we're in the end of the Roaring '20s. What is it?
Oh, this is, I think, the most notable roller coaster that we have highlighted so far in this sort of a segment. It's the Cyclone at Luna Park that's part of Coney Island in Brooklyn, New York.
Perhaps the most iconic roller coaster literally ever.
Yeah, I really think that it's in the running for the most iconic roller coaster. A lot of people, when they think of a roller coaster, this is what they picture because it was a part of New York for almost 100 years now. It's been in a ton of TV shows and movies, and it is a decent ride. It opened in June 26 of 1927. It was designed by Vernon Keenan, who also did a handful of other coasters in the northeast region of the United States. But the Coney Island Cyclone is the only surviving installation of his work. So, DJ, the Cyclone, it's nearly 100 years old. It's 75 feet tall, 65 miles per hour, almost 3,000 feet long. But it was standing but not operating for about 5 years, from 1970 to 1975, and it was almost demolished to make room for an aquarium expansion in 1972. Can you believe that?
No, I love aquariums, but can you imagine if that was gone? I mean, that is that's a piece of not only, I would say, New York City, but really America in general.
Yes,
that's
Americana.
Such an iconic. It is Americana. If you talk to folks from New York, Long Island area, they all seem to have this story about the Cyclone or going to Coney Island at Luna Park and at least seeing their older sibling on it or something like that. But a crazy, crazy ride, especially for its time. People that have been on it, they always talk about such a unique and almost out of control feeling on that ride. And I believe, unless they've changed it and modernized it, I think it's still one of those rides where the brakes are operated manually with a lever.
Nope.
Has that changed recently?
That has since been automated, as with many roller coasters in the United States, that has been turned over to the ride control systems to control that braking. But there are a few coasters out there in the world that still have that manual braking, including a few roller coasters in Europe that have a brakeman with someone who rides the coaster and brakes it throughout the course. It's amazing to think about, and I know it could never exist in the United States, but it's very intriguing.
I think it still does use, though, that underside braking rather than the traditional fins that grip sort of this metal plate that runs underneath. This has two sort of plates that rise up and rub the bottom of the car to slow it down, which you hardly see that at all anymore at all.
Yeah, there's only a few coasters that I have personally ridden that have that kind of braking configuration. One of them that comes to mind is the Comet at Hershey Park, I think. And if I'm not mistaken, that opened in 1945. So there's surely a lot of history that's wrapped up in the Coney Island Cyclone. Have you had the pleasure of riding it, DJ?
No, as far east as I've been is actually Philadelphia, so I haven't even been to New York City before. It's on the list, though. I know you've been on this, though, right, Chris?
Oh, yeah. Of course I have.
You're
love
a true
the
roller coaster
Cyclone.
enthusiast. I'm over here like, oh, it does this and that, and I have no clue.
No, it's.
I've seen photos, I've seen videos.
Yeah, it's. I have a few things that I've put together for my time there. I've been to Coney Island twice. Once when I was very young, and pretty much all I remember about that was the Nathan's hot dog and the little souvenir treat that I got with it.
Was that your first Nathan's hot dog?
Maybe. It might
Maybe
have
that's
been.
why it's so ingrained in your memory.
And the other time was in the summer of 2016 when I came back for a weekday in July to visit the park. I went to Nathan's again. I went to all of the different vendors along the district of Coney Island. Rode a ton of rides in Luna Park. Rode the Wonder Wheel in Dino's Wonder Wheel Park, of course, and didn't go on the beach.
That's the swinging Ferris wheel where the cars swing
Oh
back
yes,
and forth, right?
Oh yes.
So
Which is
just so the listeners know, this isn't just a attached gondola on a Ferris wheel. This is something you need to look up.
yes. If you haven't looked up, or if you're not familiar with Dino's Wonder Wheel, it's an incredible attraction. Every time I hear people talk about it, and this has been my experience as well, it's way more thrilling than you think it would be. Just being a gondola on a Ferris wheel that swings a bit. Oh, it's pretty thrilling.
And they
to
have a
say
new
the
coaster
least.
coming to that park too. Not to sidetrack, but a new Vekoma
yes, they
Suspended
do.
coaster. But going back to the Cyclone.
Yeah, there is a ton of history there. Pretty unique trains. From what I remember when I rode it, it was 3 rows to a car with heavily padded surfaces, both on the seat back, and the sides. I do remember it being a relatively high-backed and high-sided train. So it was definitely not like other wooden coasters that I've ridden, and the trains felt and looked heavy.
I thought they had 4 rows. Why am I thinking 4 rows?
I'm not sure. I am pretty sure that it's 3 rows to a car.
Okay.
But they're heavy trains.
Well,
big,
they look huge. They look
hulking
like these
trains.
big velvet couches on wheels.
Yes, yeah, that's a good way to put it. The ride itself was decently smooth when I rode it in 2016. I know Great Coasters International did a lot of work on preserving the Cyclone a little earlier in this past decade. So there are some nice bits of airtime as well, and really an incredible legacy that everyone that rides it is then a part of. And now I am a part of that legacy as well.
Aren't there some like really, really close hit moments too, like near miss moments on that ride?
Huh. Maybe no more so than other wooden coasters, I think. I mean,
It just seems like it goes underneath itself and around itself
yeah.
so many times because of how compact it is. And you see a photo of this. It's literally just planted there. There's buildings around it, chain link fence up around it. It's pretty maddening to look at, honestly.
yeah. We've talked previously about wooden coasters that follow a Cyclone style layout, and this is the blueprint for that. There were several roller coasters, including, I think, at least 4 roller coasters built by Six Flags at their parks that were modeled after this Cyclone design, which is sort of like a figure-8 layout where it drops and then goes through an elevated turn of sorts and then has a few hills and another turn on the other edge of the layout. But they duplicated it because it was a success. This is the iconic roller coaster. This is the archetype of a roller coaster, DJ.
I feel like the best. Tell me if I'm wrong on this. I think the best modern example of a Cyclone coaster is Mind Blower at Fun Spot Kissimmee.
Yeah, it's sort of like the latest generation of that. I would agree with that.
Obviously, they've added an inversion over 90-degree turns, but it's modernized, right? But let's take a small rectangle and fit the most wild coaster we can in the small rectangle. And in 1927, you have the Cyclone.
Yeah, that was. It wasn't the first roller coaster to have maybe necessarily that style of layout, but this is what popularized it. This was Coney Island, the birthplace of the American side of the industry in many ways, and it's still there today. DJ, let me put the popularity of Coney Island when it was at its peak in perspective. Are you ready for this?
Absolutely. It seemed like correct me if I'm wrong, and obviously 2020 isn't a good litmus, but it still seems like Coney Island attracts a lot of people all the time.
Oh, yes. And even more so in, let's say, the 50s and the 60s, and even earlier as well. Because on the Saturdays and the Sundays, when there wasn't a lot of competition for entertainment offerings and it was hot, there would be literally millions of people that visited Coney Island per day. Do you understand that, DJ? I said per millions per day.
That is unbelievable. I feel like airports don't have 1 million people a day.
Well, yeah, I mean, parks now, the main regional ones get maybe
tens of thousands, and that's a good day?
Yeah.
Like low tens?
I mean, they might reach 1.5 million to 3 million for a lot of regional parks in a year. So to do millions a day is just, I'm struggling to process it. Well, and I knew that you were going to be skeptical, so I did find a primary source.
Okay.
And let me share it with you.
I mean, you have to remember, this is not, as you're pulling that up, this is not admission to get into this park. This is just like a normal park in any city. Like, you could just walk in.
Yes, it is important to note, Coney Island is a district in Brooklyn. It is not a gated amusement park. That is important to note. And there's a beach there, so... but millions of people going through there, it's hard to fathom. But DJ, I have the article for you. This is from Billboard on September 12th, 1953. Metropolitan area fun spots were jammed with heat-wilted customers last weekend as temperatures passed 95 degrees all 3 days. Ooh. Millions crowded beaches and amusement parks as the thermometer readings hit 95.5 on Friday, 97.3 on Saturday, and 95.9 on Sunday. It was the same story throughout the area. Rides were nearly deserted in the heat of the day, but were overrun with patrons from about 6 p.m. to closing. Interesting, a bit of a side note, much like modern-day amusement parks that have an adjacent water park.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was thinking of. As soon as the sun just starts to move down, people just flock to the amusement park.
It was a rich weekend for sellers of ice cream, custard, and cold drinks. Rockaway's Playland ran out of the cooling substances at 1 p.m. Sunday, then sold out 3 emergency truckloads by 11:30.
Wow.
Herman Noble. Yeah. Herman Noble, 75-year-oldster, who has been at Rocks since the construction in 1903, said the mercury soared to 133 degrees in the sun at the goat ride. It was agreed to be the spot's hottest day in 25 years. Wow. Well, here's where we get to the Coney Island
That's
part.
Crazy.
The Department of Parks estimated Coney Island and the Rockaways had 1 million persons each on Saturday and 1.5 million persons on Sunday, while Palisades Amusement Park over in Cliffside, New Jersey, said Saturday's 90,000 was its highest total ever for an August day. This record was toppled the very next day when 100,000 people poured through the park. Up at Rye, New York, Playland Amusement Park reported weekend business as excellent. Jimmy Ontorado at Steeplechase Park said the heat jammed the beaches but hurt the spot's rides. He said Coney Island grosses were off about 15% below normal for a Sunday. Layers of cardboard were slapped on kiddie ride seats to prevent moppets from getting their bottoms burned. It was 106 in the sun there and 105 at Rye.
Wow. I love the ingenuity of, just slap some cardboard on the seats.
Yeah, it's amazing to think about the amusement park experience that in some ways has come a long way, maybe in terms of ride technology and maybe even quality of experience, but in some ways, we're all still just people trying to be entertained and amused. And I think that's the archetypical purpose of amusement parks when you really get down to it.
Yeah, I mean, even as the temperature, declined a little bit, people could feel that, and they decided, okay, we're done with the beach. Let's move on.
Yeah, time to ride the Cyclones, see? It's a nice roller coaster. I promise I won't do too many more accents. Yeah. Well, it's just dumbfounding to consider 1.5 million people at Coney Island in one day.
And do yourself a favor, dear listener. Go on YouTube and search Coney Island 1930s, 1920s, and look at some of that black and white footage that they have, even earlier than the Cyclone. It's fascinating, some of the rides that used to exist. And how you can see some where rides today were inspired by older rides and other rides that probably should never have existed.
Yes. Slides and all other manner of
bouncing floors. Yeah.
Oh, yes. It's incredible. And when you're looking at those pictures, you very well might see the beaches, which look incredibly crowded. And I don't know how it was an enjoyable experience for any of them, because it's just a huge crowd of people covering the beach. And you believe
there's just nothing else to do. I mean, what else was there to do on a hot day like that on a Saturday? I mean,
yeah, I mean, they could read a copy of The Great Gatsby at home, but really
go to a baseball game. That sounds miserable.
Yeah, there was the Brooklyn Dodgers around that time for a lot of that. My grandfather, who grew up in Brooklyn, has a lot of great memories about Coney Island and going to see the Brooklyn Dodgers, too.
Wow.
He actually saw Jackie Robinson play before, so he just told me that offhand once when we were talking about whatever, maybe even books, and he said, yeah, there was one time when I was going to see a game at the stadium and Jackie Robinson was playing, and I said, why, how have you never told me this? That's incredible. So yeah, it's definitely a lot of history at Coney Island and an incredible legacy.
No one in my family has seen Jackie Robinson play. Just so we're aware.
Oh, I'm sorry. But that is the Coney Island Cyclone, which was our anniversary coaster for this episode. Opened in 1927, and it's still going today because Coney Island is just about ready to reopen. But now, let's get into the rest of the show. Corkscrew Convos cleared for dispatch. Let's dive in.
We're diving in. We just crested the lift hill, and we have a listener question. This comes to us from Jason. Shout out to Jason.
Ooh, shout out to Jason.
And remember, dear listener, you too can ask us a question on our various social media platforms at Corkscrew Convos on Instagram, as well as Facebook. We're on Twitter, and we have an email, corkscrewconvos@gmail.com. But the question today from Jason, it was interesting to hear that both of you, DJ and Chris, I added that in there, have operated rides before. What rides have you operated? And maybe a more interesting question, although that question is extremely interesting, any advice for new ride operators? Got very specific there.
Okay, well, Jason, I am not going to give a laundry list necessarily of the rides that I have specifically operated, because then I'd be sharing a list of former and or maybe current places that I've worked on the internet. And that's not necessarily something I'm going to do right now. But I'm going to be general about it to just give you an idea of things that I've operated. I've operated a B&M coaster, an Aero coaster from Aerodynamics. I've operated a former Aero coaster that is now something else. I've operated a former Aero flume ride that is now something else, sort of. I've operated a Hampton flat ride, an Intamin flat ride, and a spieling boat ride. And no, not that spieling boat ride, the other one.
I'm trying to figure out what this former Arrow now converted coaster is. You keep going. I'm gonna ponder that.
Well, yeah, I don't know if I'm going to list it, but I mean, not online. I might tell you afterwards, but
Yeah. No, I'm gonna think about it.
Yeah. Well, the advice, just a few quick notes for you, Jason, that I thought of when we were putting together this outline. When you are a ride operator, you need to be able to quickly scan your surroundings and continuously monitor your peripheral vision. And I will say it gets easier as you get more familiar with your surroundings, like the ride station or restricted areas, things like that. You can get ready to see sort of things out of the corner of your eye. You said, there shouldn't be movement over there. What's going over there? And then you can be able to respond more efficiently there. This does really come in handy for checking for loose articles, depending on the rides and the park's loose article policy. And if people are where they shouldn't be or doing something that they shouldn't be doing. It is also very important to have patience as a ride operator. Don't expect your riders to walk into the station with a firm understanding of park policies, because they're not going to. They don't walk into the park and get handed a rule book. That is just not what happens.
That's a really good point. I like that.
Yeah, even though it's easy to feel as a team member at an attraction or really just working at a park that people should know what they need to know to have a good time safely and respectfully, they're not going to do that. There is sort of the vacation mind that a lot of people get into when they're visiting a park, where they just sort of don't have common sense, at least to what you think they should have when it comes to degrees of common sense. Because people are there to enjoy themselves, they're there to relax, so they might sort of let their guard down, just sort of go with the flow, and it is your job as an operator to make sure that they always do remain safe and allow you to efficiently operate the ride as well. You might get the same questions from people over and over. You're going to hear people say the same things again over and over when they get off, like, wow,
but worded
I love that.
20 different ways. 20 different ways. They're saying the exact same thing.
They're really going to be saying the exact same thing, but don't let that annoy you or irritate you. Just keep that gentle smile on your face, and you'll be golden. Some final notes that I have. You got to hydrate, because it is hot work in the summer. A lot of times it is in direct sunlight, and that can be pretty rough. But also, get enough sleep if you are really going to be a ride operator, because you do need to recognize the commitment that you are taking. Minimize the late night parties. Don't go out having a great time late at night if you have a shift that morning, because you need to recognize that you yourself need to maintain a state of alertness and responsiveness to safely complete your job, because that's why you're there to do. That's why you're there, to keep people safe while they are enjoying your attractions. So that's what I have, DJ. I know you have some experience in ride operations too. What you got?
Yeah, although not nearly as much as you, Chris. My resume isn't as long in this specific department. I did like everything you said. Things I didn't think about that you said. Hydration is extremely important, especially you're working out in the summer. Most of these places aren't air conditioned, if there's any fans at all. And another thing you said I really liked, having that patience is so important. You don't know if this is the first time these folks have ever been to your park or on your specific ride, let alone any park anywhere. So just be patient with everybody. They're there to have a good time. They've spent money to be there, and usually they want to have a good time. So do your best to accommodate for them. Something Chris and I do share, though, in common, we've both operated a B&M coaster. I did not operate a coaster at that employment I was talking about earlier when I was 16. I was just kind of a teen job sort of thing there. Never was on a ride. But later on in my life, I got the opportunity to take a few weeks and learn the ins and outs of a B&M coaster, and eventually got to operate it. That was kind of a little dream come true for me. It's a little nerdy, I'd say, but I really enjoyed my time there. The main thing to remember is that people are having fun. These are machines designed to thrill, but at the end of the day, that is what they are. They are a machine. They're a large, heavy piece of equipment that is moving. It's putting people on them. So it's very important to be paying attention and know what's happening at all moments. I think, really the primary function of a ride operator, other than pushing buttons and operating the ride, is functioning as a great secondary check. So hopefully the people at your ride are checking for loose articles, making sure height limits are right. But you are also responsible for doing that. As a ride operator, when a ride's in the station, when the car is in there, you're looking at everyone in the queue, maybe before someone's even on the ride. While the people on the dock are loading people in, maybe you're looking at the next group, seeing is that person tall enough, being ready to make sure that the people in the dock scan the right people as they come through on the next train. Another thing extremely important, always monitoring those cameras, as well as the blocks too. Blocks being the block breaks that segment the ride into their safety sections or segments. They are, for the most part, any modern roller coaster is designed to, operate automatically with the block system. But I always took an extra ounce of effort to make sure that everything was operating normally, making sure that a car isn't stuck on a safety brake so that I know if we need to get maintenance up there, we can do it quickly and minimize the time that our guests are going to have to wait if something like that happens. Also, again, monitoring those cameras, looking for those cell phones as maybe the ride's going up the lift hill. People might be unbuckling their seatbelt. That's important to look at as well. And really ready to do either a station stop or an e-stop when the moment is right and when it's appropriate. And to kind of go along with that as well, being ready to do that. As the operator, you're seeing the whole picture of the ride. So be ready to speak up always, even when you're not sure. And whether that's speaking up and saying something to people on dock, guests in the queue, or if it's that station stop or e-stop, just be ready for anything. And don't be afraid to delegate to that team on the dock. You're under immense pressure being in the ride operator position. And so if there's anything that needs to be said, just say it. If somebody needs to be checked for height, delegate it. Know that your team will take care of it. It's not your responsibility in that moment after you've pointed it out. And as always, reiterate any information not included in any pre-recorded spiel there might be. Make sure you say it right, adequately, accurately. Make sure you say it slow. And above all, stay safe. But in the meantime, always have fun, no matter what ride you're operating.
DJ, what do you mean by dock?
So depends on where you're working. Where I was working, dock was referred to as the station of the ride. That's where folks are in the queue. They're usually behind some sort of air gate. What's where the car itself is moving through the station. It's also the other side where guests are getting off of the ride in the station and exiting. We always called that dock. And I think of dock as a safety critical position. There should be no one on that dock when the ride is moving. All operators should be in their specific spot, wherever that has been located for them. Obviously, operators behind the panel, but everyone needs to be in their safe spot, and all guests need to be behind those air gates and assured they're locked and closed.
Okay, so it is interesting to think about the different names that different companies have for different positions. When I think about the name ride operator, I think of just the role itself in a park. Dock, I might call platform or floor, depending on the company and the training materials. So it is interesting to compare the different processes and names that different companies have for amazing rides.
And I really like the term dock because when you think about a dock, whether it's a fishing dock or a boating dock, there are places where, say, a guardrail isn't present. These are safety critical spots where people on a dock need to be more vigilant. You think about anytime you're loading onto a boat, anytime you're fishing on a dock, you know where those guardrails are at. At least you should be vigilant to know. Usually people aren't running on a dock. So just a lot of things to consider. And I think that's why I really like the terminology dock too. It carries with it that safety critical meaning behind it.
Yeah, definitely. So, Jason, that was a great question. Thank you for that question, Jason. And a hearty shout out to you.
Yes, Jason. Shout out to you. And so, Chris, what's going on?
Well, there's a lot of things going on, but we've selected a few things to talk about for this episode. To review with our listener, Goings On, this is a section of the show where we talk about things that we're thinking about. This could be current events, maybe funny jokes, intriguing developments, ghost stories, public apologies, juicy rumors, album reviews, and or trip reports.
Can we start with a ghost story?
I don't have one prepared.
Well, we talked about this last time, and I think this might be a ghost story. I was saying, ghost story, we never talk about that. But we have a bit of a ghost story. Well, at least a handful of enhancements coming to the Haunted Mansion. Truly a ghost story.
Now I get what you're saying, DJ. I like that. That was good. Yes, but at Disneyland in Anaheim, California, the Haunted Mansion will have a few changes when the park reopens later this month in April. And this was released on the Disney Parks blog. They highlighted these new set pieces that will be around the attraction experience. One of them is the addition of a pet cemetery adjacent to the queue, which will be borrowing, I think, from Walt Disney World's queue that already had a sort of pet cemetery. And if I had to guess where this will be, I think it would be near the final switchbacks before the Fast Pass merge, and right before you go into the building itself. They have a little bit of a planter area that's right next to one of the berms that you wait beside with the Haunted Mansion queue, and that's where I'm guessing that they have this new pet cemetery addition to the attraction.
Is it just more of a barren area compared to the rest of the queue?
Well, I think it was just more of a nondescript cemetery. Okay. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, if I'm understanding this correctly, they are transitioning it into something more tongue-in-cheek, like a pet cemetery, with puns on the
headstones there.
On the headstones and all of that. But the big change to the Haunted Mansion, which I think is going to really bring everything together nicely, is the addition, or really the return, of an original portrait in the loading area of the Haunted Mansion.
In the loading area, so when you're getting in the Doom buggies?
Well, right before there. Let me take you back, DJ.
I've only been in Walt Disney World, so you might have to map it out for me.
I will. Ex Atencio is a legendary Disney Imagineer who did so much for a lot of the early Disneyland attractions through to the 60s as well, to include the Haunted Mansion and Pirates of the Caribbean. And one of his portraits, which is titled April to December, which is a sort of a dynamic shifting portrait that is one thing at one moment and another thing at another, and it has been returned to the Haunted Mansion. I don't know why it was ever removed, but now it's going to be back, and that's going to be really nice to see. Because let me take you through the flow of the attraction as it was and as it is going to be now.
Sure, absolutely.
Previously, after you go through the stretching room, which is actually an elevator at Disneyland, it's not just a holding room like it is at Walt Disney World. After you leave the stretching room, you walk out into a dark hallway, let your eyes adjust, and you pass by these shifting dynamic paintings. That could be a cat and a ship and those sort of things that lightning strikes, and the painting is a sinister version of what it was just a second ago, that sort of thing. And then directly in front of you, once you walk out, are the busts with faces that follow you as you move. I know that's an actual part of the ride at Walt Disney World, but in California, it's part of the queue, interestingly. But after you see that set piece, then you turn right. And this is what it was. It was then you were in a dark room with one more switchback, and then you loaded into the Doom buggies. Now, it's going to be a little different. You turn right after you see the busts, and you see a folding shoji screen, which is that sort of zigzag screen that is often used in bedrooms or things like that. But there's a decorative Victorian shoji screen there, and then you have one additional painting, which is that return of April to December by Ex Atencio. It is a painting of, at one moment, it's a happy young woman, and then at another moment, it becomes an angry elderly woman. So it's a little bit of extra Disney magic that they're putting into the queue, and I think it fixes a disconnect, really, in the attraction between when you're in the hall just outside of the stretching room, it's very well dressed and there's always things to look at. But then you go beyond that, and previously it was just this dark stretch right before you load into the Doom buggies. Now, it's going to be a little more. There's a little bit more to look at before you take that one final turn and you load into the Doom buggies. So I think it's ultimately a good thing for the Haunted Mansion, of course, but it still doesn't address the emptiness of the actual loading area of the Haunted Mansion at Disneyland, DJ. Because once you go past this new /old portrait in the queue, and you take that one turn, you get the moving walkway where you load into the Doom buggies, but on the other side of that, it's just a black wall that has some patterns of white projected on it. And it's, in some ways you think, okay, I'm already loading in, I don't need a lot to look at there, but it really becomes noticeable that in this Haunted Mansion experience is just an empty room at that point when you think about the overlay for the Nightmare Before Christmas that is usually in place at the Disneyland Resort from September to January, where they have this huge, grand set piece of all of the characters from the Nightmare Before Christmas in this area, where regularly in the Haunted Mansion, it's just a black wall. And so you really notice the difference once you see what the overlay does with that space. So I'm wondering if maybe in, I guess, 20 to 30 years at this point, when they want to change up something next in the Haunted Mansion, if they'll build that out more. But it's interesting to think about that they made some of this change, but there is still more that they could do in the future if they want to.
Nightmare Before Christmas is probably one of my top 5 movies. I would love to see that overlay someday, but I do like that they went with sort of that practical effect to get that portrait to change. You know, it's not just some sort of screen or something like that.
Yes, it is using that same technology that the other portraits have used for decades, and the Haunted Mansion will be better than before when it reopens at the Disneyland Resort in late April. It'll be interesting to track and see the other new experiences wherever they are at Disneyland. There will also be Snow White's Enchanted Wish, which is a more substantial rebuilding of that attraction in Fantasyland. And maybe we'll see little secrets pop up here and there about other additions that they have done around the resort with all this time that they've had.
I totally agree with you. And they have had a lot of time, and not only this park, but other parks. And so it's good to see even these older attractions get some love as well when there's been just some downtime and some real time to invest in these older attractions.
Well, DJ, what else is going on?
We've got some interesting news out of IAAPA. This is the International Association of Amusement Parks and Attractions. This is essentially the voice of all themed attractions in the world, frankly. And their news from yesterday is that the IAAPA Expos are happening in person in 2021. Now, these are the trade shows, essentially, of the amusement industry. There are usually 3 a year. There's one in North America in the United States. There's one usually in Europe, and there's one usually in Asia. Last year, these were, I believe they didn't get to do any of them, if I'm correct, Chris. I believe all 3 were postponed. The third expo, the big one that usually happens in Orlando, the big expo, that happened virtually last year. But this year, IAPA is telling us that all 3 expos will be happening in person. There's a variety of safety measures taking place at all 3 locations. They're going to be following local, regional, state, country level restrictions, and also the regulation and rules that need to happen in order for this to work. But our different expos this year, there's going to be Shanghai. That's August 10th through the 13th. Then almost a month later, Barcelona, September 28th through the 30th. And then finally, the big one of all of them, Orlando's, November 15th through the 18th, always takes place the week before Thanksgiving. That one does. Updates are going to happen on the IAPA website as each of those expos draws closer. So I imagine the regulations and rules and sort of safety measures happening in Shanghai in August will look a lot different later on in November, nearly 3 months after that, when that show takes place. It'll be interesting. We're going to follow along, and I'm sure we'll update you, dear listener, with how that goes. I hope that perhaps Chris and I, or one of us, will be able to cover one of those expos this year for the podcast in some form or another. But, it's good to see that these are coming back, because the virtual expo last year, it was a great effort by the IAPA team. They did the best that they could. I'm glad that they put safety first. But to be frank, it's just not the same.
Yeah, it's really going to be nice that these are able to happen in person again later this year. We've come a long way from 2020. We still have some more room to go, but they have reached a point where later in this year, we'll be able to have these 3 expos, and that's really great to see. At the Orlando Expo, there is that show floor, which is just this huge, sprawling setup of all these booths and kiosks of any manner of vendor or company showing off what they offer. And also there's an educational aspect of the expo as well.
Huge component. I didn't even mention that.
When there's a lot of different lectures and interactive sessions that people can go to if they have the IAPA membership, and the educational component of that as well. And you can learn from the best people that have the best practices. And it's incredible to look through the educational catalog to see all of the amazing topics that they cover, from, for example, something like bowling alley management all the way to the big stuff too. It's really nice. And
yeah, and even the edu tours they do, where they take folks on behind the scenes tours of these parks to really learn from, specifically in Orlando in that area, the people that run these, and learnings that you can glean from them.
Oh, yes. Yeah, it's a great opportunity for people that are in the industry working on bettering themselves and their businesses. And it's an incredible resource, and they're going to be in person again. So that's really nice, DJ.
And as the date draws closer, dear listener, we hope as the podcast, if we continue how we're doing, we'll be able to be in a position where we'll be able to provide you with some updates on social media from the multiple news announcements that happen at that expo, specifically the Orlando one. So keep listening, keep recommending us to your friends, because it may just happen. You'll have to see.
Yeah. So, DJ, let's go to our lightning round now, which is a fast-paced segment in which we go over things that maybe we don't have a lot of information on, or things that we don't have a lot to say about, and or discussions to previous things that we've talked about. So what's the first thing? What is the first flash of lightning that you have for us, DJ?
Well, in our lightning round of episode 27, our first piece of news, Dollywood is making some changes to their mask policy. This is according to WZTV Channel 9 in the Eastern Tennessee area. They've come out and said that outdoor areas where 6 feet physical social distancing can take place are now mask optional areas. So all ticketing areas, park entry areas, trams and rides, all queues, all indoor areas, in spaces where guests cannot maintain 6 feet of physical social distance, masks will still be required by all guests. They've also come out to say that all staff, everyone working at the park, will be in masks at all times, as they have been doing. And we did do a brief check, Silver Dollar City. It doesn't seem like the park itself has come out as Dollywood has with the media, but SDC Fans, a site on Facebook, seems to have confirmed this change. It's not as legitimate news as Dollywood, so we would assume the policy would be the same, but we're just reporting that straight out of what Channel 9 had said out of Eastern Tennessee, that Dollywood's making the changes. It seems the Silver Dollar City is doing the same, as the fan site would seem to confirm this as well.
Well, what else do we got, DJ?
We also have the Tornado Ride opening this year at Knoebels. Now, this was pushed back in 2020, but this is now happening in 2021. It's that typical fair tornado ride you see. I think there's 4 arms, a gondola on each with 4 seats facing each other. They kind of rotate around in axes, and the riders on each gondola can spin their car faster or slower. That's been confirmed by the park's social media, so that's coming this year. Are we going this year, Chris?
Well, I'd love to. I've never been to Knoebels, but it looks like such an amazing park.
We'll have to check it out. Great historic park located in the middle of Pennsylvania. Maybe it'll happen. Do we have a final round of lightning, a final flash?
Oh yeah, lightning is about to strike a 3rd time, DJ. Out of Alton Towers, the Retro Squad is coming to the park for this season. What is the Retro Squad? Well, that is a collection of flat rides that might have been on fair circuits previously or other temporary installations, and they're going to be named the Funk and Fly, the Mixtape, and the Roller Disco. So I love how they're packaging these editions, DJ, and I don't know how long these attractions are going to be at the park, but they push it as the new edition for 2021, as it's something that's cool and hip. It's retro. They have an incredible announcement video that's fully animated, and there's great 80s music to it. It's an incredible watch, so I would recommend that the listener check that out. But these are not common flat rides. These are some things that I may have seen videos of at fairs now and again, but I've never ridden these particular rides, and really, you think it's not a huge new addition, but it's what they're able to do, and it adds capacity to the park, which then lets them put through more guests to the gate each day, and it's a little more something to do whenever people visit Alton Towers this year, so that is a good thing.
Yeah, I love the packaging. The retro 80s Transformer-like video is great. Great addition to this UK park. Hope to get there someday. And like you said, I also love that they didn't just add a swinging ship or something like that. These are 3 very distinct rides that might be difficult to ride somewhere else.
Yep, that's right. But now we are out of lightning in this lightning round, and it is time to hit the brakes, but we're not done yet.
That's right, dear listener. We're not done yet. As I mentioned earlier in the episode, be sure to send us questions. Let us have a Corkscrew conversation with you. We're on a variety of social media platforms, such as Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. We're at Corkscrew Convos at all of those places. Corkscrew.convos on Instagram if you want to get specific. We even have an email, corkscrewconvos@gmail.com. But it's a place where you can ask us any question you might have. Remember, if you ask a question, you will get a shout out on the show. We'll answer it. You can use your real name, anonymous name, however you want to do it. But there really is a reason to follow the show on each of these platforms, isn't there, Chris?
Oh, definitely. We like to have memes occasionally on Twitter or to retweet really interesting things that a park might have put out. On Instagram, we like to share some pretty pictures that we've taken. Hopefully, we will be having some new pretty pictures. We were getting pretty close to running out of photos to post on Instagram from our travels. And on Facebook, again, we like to share nice articles or, again, things that parks are doing with maybe our take on them as well. And we might get into some discussions here and there. So really, there is a reason to follow the show on each of these platforms. And of course, if you are still listening, I think it's safe to say that you like the show, and we're really glad that you do. So please follow the show as well, wherever you listen to this podcast. That can be on Spotify, on Apple, on Pocket Casts, on Overcast, on Amazon, really anywhere. So go ahead, follow the show. It'll put it right in your queue, so as soon as we drop the episode in our feed, it is then available to you to listen for free. And it's a great time. It is a Corkscrew Convo, DJ.
It certainly is. I love following things, having that cue. It's right there for me. I don't have to look and search for it. When the episode comes out, I can watch it at my leisure. Really, really love that. And don't forget, I'm on Twitch as well, DJ Forfire. I'm trying to get on there, as much as I can. But if you're following me on Twitch, you'll be able to know when anything is happening live. Sometimes I put an announcement on there, so be sure to do that as well. But other than that, I think this does it for this episode, Chris.
Well, that's right. It's been a nice episode. We've talked about some history and some new things happening too, some new things happening to old things, and it's been good. But until next time, my name is Chris.
And my name is DJ.
And this has been another Corkscrew Convo. Thanks for listening.
Thanks, everyone.